talking Illinois high school football.
If your goals are as high as you talk about, tonight's the night you go out and just take one more step.
It's a view from the West.
And it starts right now!
Welcome into a special edition of View from the West podcast, the podcast covering Illinois high school football on the western side of the state of Illinois. I'm your host, Greg Armstrong, not joined by Mitch Stormer, but joined by a cast of characters here. We're getting the band back together. We're calling this Friday Night Lights Camera Action, the behind-the-scenes stories from our Friday night football coverage. So if we're talking about Friday nights, in the Quad Cities covering high school football, we're talking Dan Pearson. Dan Pearson, thank you so much for being on the pod. You were recently on Matt Randazzo's show. You've been making the rounds here. Welcome back into View from the West.
Great to be here. Love what you're doing, and I wish preseason drills started tomorrow. Actually, ready to go. Football's not far off.
So close. Will you be walking the sidelines on 7-on-7s together? Is that what's going to happen?
Probably so. Yeah.
All right. So Dan Pearson in the house. If we're talking Friday nights, we're bringing in Brian Stocking, the longtime executive producer. Intern is not a good title for you. It needs to be more than that. The command module, the master of the command module, the executive producer, Brian Stocking. Welcome into the show, my friend.
It's great to be here. Thursday night, we're getting ready. We're talking football. We're talking all things of sports. It's great.
Yes. Stock, do you have your Friday night stories ready?
Oh, of course I do.
Okay, good. That's what we need from you here.
I was even looking up old Olympic and Western Big Six schedules tonight.
Well,
we're not
going to talk about that,
are we going to go back and shoot those games again? Is that what's happening?
Yes. All right. Also joining us, we referenced his show a minute ago, Off the Air with Matt Randazzo. It's the one, the only Matt Randazzo. Dazzo, what schedules have you been looking up and from what year?
No, none yet. I'm just so excited to see what Brian Stocking is going to say tonight.
That's
the only reason I'm here.
You said a little prayer before we went on the air here, so we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, I'm a good Catholic boy. We'll see if that works. It hasn't in the past, but we'll see if we can finally break through.
All right. Well, we're also joined by his longtime counterpart at WQAD, now the sports director at WQAD, Kory Kuffler. Cuff, you worked with Pearson at 6. You worked with Dazzo at 8. So I won't make you pick which one you like better, but But
he tolerated me. Let's be honest.
Obviously, I'm the curse because neither one of them work in TV anymore, and I'm still here. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know. All right. Plenty of stories to come from both sides of both sides of the river. But we're joined also, last but certainly not least, the one, the only, the never wrong Nick Bull, Bully. I've wanted to have you on the pod for a long time, my friend. You and I go way back. We got some war stories from, before most people were even awake, working in TV news. Here you are. Welcome to the show.
Absolutely. Thanks. I'm glad to be here with everyone present. That is for a different podcast, and we'll have a different rating if we're telling the war stories before the sun came up. But yeah. Glad to be here. We are going to get you booked on Card Subject to Change. We're going to get you on there as well.
Oh, I love it. I'd love to talk some wrestling.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
You're always welcome. We'll get you in here this year. But looking forward to, I'm with Friday Night Royalty.
I love it.
Dan Pearson's an institution. He introduced the highlight zone to this market.
Yep.
And behind Batman, there's always Robin, and that was Brian Stocking for the longest time. And then, Brian Stocking went over to help out Dazzle and Cuff and became such a big, vital part. So I tell everybody that ever has a Brian Stocking story, that's the guy that made Friday nights go. That's the guy that kept the wheel rolling, so to speak.
Well, we'll get into it.
The compliments.
Yeah, we'll get into it in a little bit. But yeah, I think a huge part of, Stock, I'll give you some compliments here. I think a huge part of what was so great about you is everybody wanted to go to games and you wanted to sit in the building and gather scores. And so I think that's a huge role, gathering scripts, gathering scores, doing all the behind the scenes legwork. Obviously, you were good at it because you're still doing it. So we'll talk about all that in a little bit. But I wanted to do this because I wanted to give kind of a look behind the scenes of what happened on Friday nights, kind of how Friday nights came to be. I'd really love to pick everybody's brain about shooting high school football, what we kind of remember, what techniques we've learned over the years, what we still think about when we walk the sidelines, and then obviously the shenanigans and all of the chaos that goes on behind the scenes. So Pierce, I got to start with you. I know you just told this story on Dazzo's show last week, but kind of take me back to you graduate from Bradley and, you're in Peoria and then you end up in Springfield. Where along the way did the idea come from to, hey, let's do more than 2-3 games? Or I guess give me what was the current landscape and what were you kind of looking to change?
Yep. So that would have been 1983. The fall of 83 is when I started at Channel 19. I interned at Channel 25, so got a great taste there with a wonderful guy. Les Shapiro was the sports director there, and a guy named Mike Dimmick ended up being the news anchor, and they both really taught me a lot. And then we covered a lot of games. I mean, for then was 7 or 8, and that was the max we could get. And I'm using it was like a bank camera. The sports guys got just awful equipment. You guys lived that. And I had to drive a car that had simulated wood grain paneling and stuff, and no two-way. Yeah.
That sounds like back when TV was TV. Am I right, Bully?
TV was TV. And,
our first of many of those tonight.
Yeah. So the guy I worked with, Doug Bell, we were both hugely into it. We were doing half-hour shows and stuff.
Yeah.
But not, just separate shows, like when somebody would win a state title, not on Friday nights. But then I kind of pitched the idea there. No way, we don't have the manpower. Same thing in Springfield. And then we came here in 87. And so it was probably about 1990. TC wanted to take Fridays off, go watch his kids compete. And so one night, and I knew it was my opportunity. And then one night, hey, Paula Sands, why don't you make the call? Threw her a script. She crushed it. And then we did it a couple weeks in a row, and then I will say I got some people at the station were very, this has run its course. It's probably that nobody wants to hear the weather guy do it. And then a shoe company up in Milwaukee wrote a big fat check. I think it was like $80,000 to put their logo on it. And we got to go longer. And then we went from about 4.5 minutes to 15. And that's when it was born, So they had several sponsors through the years and stuff, and we had to do it, which was great because we got shot down so many times. It was always lobbying the desk all the days leading up to Friday night. So
yeah,
that's how it was born.
Yeah. Where did the idea for anchors reading the highlights, just for something different, or where did that come from?
I don't know. I guess just from the old commercial, the referee commercial. Stock would probably remember that. You make the call, and then that kind of became the thing for the first season, and then we evolved into other things, and it just people were enamored with it. And I remember a few years after that, I was on a Friday night, and everybody remembers Hank Strunk. He took a phone call, and some lady was visiting and said, "I can't believe what I just watched. This is awful. This is horrible." And then Hank said, "We won an Emmy. What are you talking about?" So it was kind of funny. So it just kind of came naturally. And, I'd say viewers were pretty enamored by it. And then back then, even you didn't have a replay. Mm-hmm. It was on 87.7, and coaches said they would listen to it on the way home and stuff. And people never thought to tape it, I guess. But I was with Coach Boblet a few weeks ago, and he said he had people in the Booster Club meeting said they'd leave early to go home and watch it.
Yeah.
So which was really cool. So.
Yeah. Well, who were the original anchors and weatherman that read highlights? You said Paula Sands.
Yeah, and Terry, and then John Mooney was epic. He was so into it, and he was great because he easily laughed, and we did some pretty funny stuff. I thought we had themes and stuff too, and he and he knew how to read a highlight and stuff. And he would add in, he could go all the way. He just had his own thing, and Paula was hugely into it. And so that was, it just added a different wrinkle for them too.
Yeah.
So it's and I think they liked it because they only had to produce like 3.5 minutes of news on Friday nights.
Yeah, there you go. I think in one of my last years there, might have been my last season doing Highlight Zone at Channel 6, we had Paula Sands back on and she read highlights one night. So that was cool. That was a cool kind of full circle moment. But all right, Stock, you grew up in the Quad Cities. What are your earliest memories of the Highlight Zone?
I was the football statistician at Riverdale.
Yes.
And 1990 was the first year of the zone. And we could, on the way home from games, we could listen to a transistor radio and have it air through the bus of the Highlight Zone. If we lost, that was all we heard. And we had a couple of people a couple of times we had kids who brought those little transistor TV sets. So that was even better when we could do that because we could actually watch the highlights, and we would watch because the Highlight Zone didn't just cover Moline, Rocky, Western Big Six, MAC. They covered the Olympic. They covered the Three Rivers. We were desperately wanting to know what was going on with Prophetstown and Morrison and the other teams in our conference. They would cover the Lincoln Trail. They would cover Womack and Eastern Iowa Hawkeye. I mean, they covered everything. And it was like watching, it was 15 minutes of just absolute greatness. And if we lost, that was all we got to listen to.
Yeah. All right, Pearson, isn't there a story about you covering an Alito practice on one of their playoff runs? And there was a certain offensive lineman, a center that was MIA, that was not there for interviews. Isn't that how the story goes?
That's how it goes. We've never really fully researched that.
So who did you interview in his stead then? Because you missed out on the legendary Nick Bull, the Rambling Bull, as they call him.
The Rambling Bull. I don't remember who was that bully.
You would have interviewed everybody except for me because I skipped media obligations that day. I got in the car and went home. I didn't want to. I didn't even know Pierce was there. And then everybody's like, "Oh, you missed out." But it was Jeff Weiss, it was Darren Melton, it was Matt Brown, and it was Mike Wayne.
There you go.
Yeah.
What do you remember about the Highlight Zone days, Bully, when you were in junior high, high school?
Junior high, it was, I was in junior high. I'd go to the games, and then it was hurry back to see what was going on, on the Highlight Zone, to see if, what plays made it on. Maybe you made it on in a cutaway or something. So I was reflecting, we were talking about texting today and leading up to this about this. It's like, I think I've lived every angle of what is great about Friday nights.
Yeah.
Intern, photog, you can call me, Red Scripts. I did that, as an employee. I did it as a fan, and then I got to witness it and be a part of it as a father. And Cuff, you've been a part of it, and it's so cool to see a thing that like you were a part of for such a long time. That's such a big thing on Friday nights still, whether it's Channel 6 or Channel 8, that, your kids now are on there. That's the coolest part. Like this team right here, and Dazzo, you did the zone as well. It is the best team I've ever been on, period.
Yep.
Because there was never any drama with us. We all wanted the same thing. That was excellence. And we all tried to top the other person. That just, iron sharpens iron, right? So like, this is the best team I've ever been on. And to play a small part on it was awesome.
A team that worked really hard every week to beat Matt Randazzo in Channel 8.
Yeah, we did.
That's not true. And I'm not saying beating wise, but like what'd you start in 87? I was 8. He wasn't kicking my butt his whole time. I was watching it as a little guy and all that kind of stuff. I remember being in the stands or at the games and all that kind of stuff too. So, and of course I interned as well there. So, but yeah, no, it's what I told Dan on my show. It's like the biggest compliment / insult that I ever got was, "Oh, I watched your guys' highlight zone." And I was like, there's a name to it, man. Like, thanks for the compliment. We appreciate it. But so yeah, like I got it. I understood it. I just was expelled out. I wasn't cool enough to be at the cool table. So I had to go start on my own and all that kind of stuff. But no, there was a lot of that was the standard bearer. I will say this. The best promo I've ever seen in sports. There's two. One was when Dan did the one where the baby was crying. And I was at 8 at the time, but the baby's crying and they try to get him like a pacifier or something like that. And then all of a sudden Dan appears in the living room, which nowadays is kind of creepy. Now that I think back about it, it's a little weird that Dan Pearson just appears, and he turns on the highlight zone and the baby's happy. Brilliant. Loved it. Hated it because it was so well done, but loved it because it was great. And then the one with I think Dan was making copies and it was like never always copied, never duplicate, or something like that. You know the line, Dan.
Yeah.
And that was well done too. And that's, I think, not that commercial was when I was like, oh, we need to do something different. But it kind of, that's not the moment, but it kind of goes back to prove like you can't just try to copy what they do. You got to tweak things and do things a little bit different. And that, and that was more when Dan kind of left that we started, and Kory came over, we started, tweaking with, mic'd ups or more interviews or those kind of things and going outside and changing and evolving because, what you guys and what Dan was doing was awesome. But I remember the Saturday morning seeing Dan and it was the Zone Blues or what do we call it?
Blues. The
Zone
Zone Blues.
Yep.
And we'd had them over at Channel 8 too. It's like as thrilling Friday nights were, then you had to be like, now I got to go cover a track meet or a cross country meet. No offense to cross country. I got a cross country runner in my family, but it just wasn't the same. So, but you guys did it too. I'll throw it to you guys. Did like we kept track, like we tried the scoreboard. No one, I think, in the Quad Cities, besides us 6, probably like kept track of how many games were done. But we thought like everybody was at home with pen and paper going, they're up 2. They're back up 1, but it was a big deal to us. It was to me. Were you guys obviously doing the same?
I still remember a sheet of paper with Pearson writing down every game. We'd sit in edit booth B, so it was the biggest edit bay, and we would write down one list was channel 6, one list was channel 8, and we'd write down every single game. And we'd, oh yeah, we absolutely counted games.
Especially when Cuff came over, we did that too. I will say in recent years, there was no reason to even keep score. But I don't want to do that. But yeah, that's the thing is we always would like, oh, they didn't get this, they got that. And then it was always like, there's no way they didn't get something must have happened. Those nights where you're there's no way they ignored. And then you'd find out the next day that like, Bully hit a deer or something like that. That never happened. But I'm just saying something in the process of getting video back or whatever happened. So
there was a poor girl. When I was at Channel 6, there was a poor girl at Channel 8 that locked her keys in her car in Burlington. And I felt bad, but I just walked by and I was like, I got to go. Like, I got to get back. And I don't remember who it was, but I felt bad for a second.
I think it was Angie Otis who did it.
Oh, you remember? Wow, you remember?
Yeah,
okay.
I think I remember that, yeah.
Oh, when you tackled her, grabbed her keys, threw them in the car and locked.
Yeah, and then I think she got a ticket once she got a ticket coming back through like Wapello or somewhere. She got a ticket
after she'd already locked her keys in her car.
Yeah.
That's
she
a bad
made
night.
it back in time. I think.
I think she did. Yeah, I think she did. Yeah,
that was the crazy part of it. She actually got stuff on air. It was wild. I remember that.
We have to take a quick break to thank our favorite sporting goods store. Of course, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Breedlove Sporting Goods, Western Illinois' premier sporting goods store for uniforms, apparel, equipment, awards, and online team stores. They provide all the same sporting goods services as the big nationwide companies, but with a faster turnaround, and their uniform pricing is a fraction of what you're probably used to. They offer names such as Adidas, Under Armour, and Nike, and are extremely responsive with any inquiries. With a primary focus on the western side of the state of Illinois, Breedlove Sporting Goods is the fastest way to outfit your team. Check them out on Facebook or at breedlovesports.com or shoot Cal Breedlove an email at calbreedlove@gmail.com for more information. So when I started at Channel 6, 2005, the Highlight Zone is rocking and rolling. Cuff, you're there as the third sports guy. Take me through kind of what did it mean to you as somebody who grew up in Moline? You were aware of the Highlight Zone to come back and work for it. I mean, that had to have been something that was pretty cool.
Oh, absolutely. So the first time I started watching it, I was working at a restaurant in college, and I would make sure I would take my break at 10:15 on Friday night so I could watch the Highlight Zone. Because obviously I wanted to get into television, and then I saw Pearson doing it, and I'm just like, you know what? This is so cool. I want to do this. Yeah. And then when I came back in 2000 and started working at Channel 6, I was like, I get to work with Dan Pearson. This was awesome for me. So I really enjoyed that. Great mentor, great friend, obviously, to all of us. Yeah, the Highlight Zone just kind of took on a whole new meaning when you got to do it on a Friday night. You know, you wanted to be the best. You wanted to shoot the best. You wanted everything about it, wanted to be great. Greg, we didn't know it until later that my first game I ever shot on the Highlight Zone was Prophetstown against Ottawa Marquette. I completely butchered the wacky that night with Paul Yeager because my macro was on, and I'm like, why is this out of focus? Let's just go with it, whatever. Yeah. And you were actually at that game in the stands. We never saw each other. We didn't know each other. Nope. But years later, we realized that we were both at that game, which was kind of crazy.
I asked Margaret McConaughey to go to homecoming with me that night. She said yes. So there you go.
She said yes. So
yeah, there you go.
But no,
you big study, you Greg.
It was. I mean, as you guys said, the Highlight Zone, Friday Night Football, whatever. It's just different. Every Friday is just different. It's one of those things you look forward to each week. Then we get 10 weeks and then playoffs. But man, it's just so much fun.
Yeah, I was telling Dazzo this story earlier, or just telling Dazzo earlier that, you know, when I graduated college and I was looking for basically any TV job in the Midwest, I was applying for anything, for news, for sports, whatever it was, just to get somewhere and get a job. And, you know, the job at Channel 6 opened up. I took the job and I knew it was news, but I wanted to help out in sports. And I really I look back and think you know, how grateful, how lucky I was to land in a spot like Channel 6 where the sports was so high profile and given so many resources on it. Now, maybe not as many resources. We're always fighting for more resources, but to my point, it was something that was a valued commodity at the station. And for me to be able to get involved in sports that way right away was excellent. You know, Pierce, how much, you know, buy-in from photographers did you have early on? Did that kind of build up over the years when certain people kind of came in and bought in? And then it's it kind of just becomes this, you know, this spirit of everybody wants to be involved if, you know, this person's in or this person's in.
Yeah, it was with the photographers, we were totally blessed. And I remember the newspaper came into the story on a night in the zone, and one of Ross Farrow's quotes was, "We'd do it for free." Huh. You know, and they would have, I believe, you know. So it was just kind of when you have that kind of buy-in and people love football and they understood the scope of the influence that we had, the platform, I guess, that we had on Friday nights, and just knowing that it was kind of a gathering too of people around their TV sets, and it was a healthy competition within the photogs. Yep. You know, and I always thought that Edit Booth B, which early in the morning, we'll keep that a secret, what you guys have going for the morning show. But I always
there
felt
are things that cannot be unseen in that edit bay that I witnessed.
Yeah, I'd rather not. It's embarrassing. I'm blushing. And I don't know. I remember and I've learned a lot more with FCA, the importance of staff care. And those moments after the show, you know, it's like, you'd look up, it's midnight. It's like, oh man, we're still here. But to be able to encourage, make fun of one another, make fun of Dazzo, you know, it was always very, very healthy. And bully, many times, you know, he would say, Pierce, we're bi-state football coverage undefeated for 21 years. And I said, yeah, I think we lost one time when Rich Henkels was the sports director, a guy. And then I thought of bully a few years ago. We moved my mother-in-law from Western Kentucky to here. And there was an old VHS tape that said our daughter, Amanda, she got to sing the national anthem one night before the Geneseo game, and I shot it was raw of her, and then all of a sudden there was a highlight zone on there, and this would have been her. I think her senior year would have been the fall of 2003, and I said, "Bully's right. We never lost." So I mean, the quality that it had to be the peak. There was so much. I mean, the photography was unreal, the writing, taking out the fool's gold last minute on the bottom line was stopping. No, I'm just teasing, but it was like, man, it was good. And now it's so different, because back then you did have to set a land speed record to get stuff on, or take that live truck and put the mast up in Princeton and pray to God that you could get a signal if you wanted the LaSalle, Peru.
Live truck set up at the Red Apple in Sterling or in Rock Falls.
Right. The only place you could get a strong signal from. And one time, Bob Palmer, one of our legends who helped us get it going, we covered a game outside of Peoria, and he went up on the hill in East Peoria that overlooks, and it broke like an FCC regulation by having a microwave. And he nailed it. It was great. Good job, Bob.
He sent stuff from Peoria with a live truck back to the Quad Cities.
Yep, that's a big rise there. You guys have probably seen it. It's the shot where every reporter goes to do a stand-up talking about Peoria, and it was a can of corn. He nailed it.
That is wow. That is
Isn't that
incredible.
unbelievable? Think about that.
That's incredible. So you talked about the competition, and another thing Dazzo and I referenced earlier today is that we've joked about wanting to beat Dazzo. That was the joke when I first started and got in the area.
Was it specifically my name?
It is funny that we really did reference you more often than
I love it. I love it.
No, so what I will say is, though, and Dazzo and I both kind of agreed, you guys would probably agree, that I think in this market, I think what the highlight zone kind of started was that sense of urgency to get to more games, right? I think that highlight zone doing what it did created more urgency at Channel 8 and Channel 4. And I think years later now, you still see this area is pretty unique in the amount of high school coverage that is, gotten from all three stations. And I think that's credit to Joey Danya, who's still there at Channel 6, credit to Jay Kidwell, who's kind of taken it over and been there for a while doing it. I mean, don't you think, Cuff, that you've seen it on both sides of the river now? I think that you do get that sense of well, if they're going to be there, we got to be there too, right?
Yeah, that's what I would talk about that every Friday night. It's all right, what games are we going to get to? And sometimes we didn't necessarily worry about what other stations were going to do. And that was the same way at the highlight zone as well. It's they're going to do what they're going to do. Yeah. But you wanted to go there. You wanted to get the better angle. You wanted to get better shots. You wanted to get better highlights. You wanted to stay there maybe one or two series longer than you should have.
Yep.
Thanks to Dan and his Pearsonitis. But
yes. It's been a while since I've heard that reference.
You would stay just a little bit longer when the other station would leave. Great, I got that fumble or I got that touchdown, and they didn't, To us, it mattered. Maybe to the viewers, it didn't, but to us, it mattered.
We always had the who you were shooting against.
Oh,
and it'd be and you guys did too, but it was it's a 116. It's they had their intern there, and it was me. I'm good. I got that one.
That was an 8-9, actually. That was about an 8-9.
Was that the 8? Was that at least the 8?
You had 8. You were the 8. Yeah.
All right, I'll take it. So, but yeah, it was those kind of things. It was we got to make sure that we're this, we're that, and everything else. I mean, and you knew, and Greg, the famous story that we always talk about, because Greg hated me forever and then yelled at me at a football game again. But
we'll get into that one. We'll get into that.
But I did. I don't know what it was, but I would see Greg, and this was probably after Pearson's years, right?
Yeah, this would have been. Yeah, this would have been when I kind of took over with Stocking too, and Ben Rosehart and Kevin Core. We were kind of all co-producers of it. We were kind of all four of us trying to do what Dan Pearson did by himself for years. But yeah. So anyway.
And I would see, I remember one week specifically, we're at Brady Street Stadium and Greg walks up, great guy. I like Greg. And he's like, hey, how's it going? How's your night? And I'm like, oh yeah. And I don't know what's wrong with me, but I'm McKay, we had people call off sick, and McKay pulled somebody for news. We're going to be shorthanded. And I knew dang well we weren't. And you were yeah, we were not going to get here. And I'm sitting here thinking in my mind, yes, we got this. And in my mind, I was if I told you what I was doing at 7:00 at night, literally, that you were going to be able to make like 4 phone calls and change things. And it's like, what's the hay was in the barn. Like what was done was done. We couldn't change anything. And then like you had told me recently, like, afterwards, years later, that like you would sit at the station and be like, well, he was lying. And I would even tell Cuff, I think I'd come back and be like, I don't know why, but I just lied to Greg tonight. So that's the stupid competition that Dan Pearson started. Look at all this.
Only I don't think Pearson has it in him to lie to somebody though, like you.
Never.
There you go.
I tell people all the time, the first, like Dan Pearson, when I realized it was okay not to be like overly competitive, was when I was at a softball game back when softball games were 1-0. And if you missed the run, you were in trouble. And it was 0-0 in Geneseo. And Dan, we had to be at least in the 16th inning, 17th inning. And I was out of batteries. I'm like, well, I'm done. And like Dan tosses me his keys. He's like, go get a battery. It's in my car. I'm like, you can do that? Like, yeah, just go get it. It's in the back seat. I was like, wow, like that's cool. So that's kind of made me realize we're all in this together. And then I went back to lying to Greg again. I don't know what's wrong with me.
So, Bully, if you'd have been shooting that softball game and Dazzo runs out of battery, let's say this is circa 2007, what's Nick Bull gonna do?
You know, I went to school with Dazzo.
Yeah, you anchored newscasts together. I've seen
We did TV 11 Dateline. But no, if it was Dazzo, I'd help him. It depends on who the person is, but more than likely.
What about a former sports director of mine?
Oh,
I would.
And not Burrich. Not Burrich. We liked Burrich.
Oh.
But another one.
Maybe not.
Well,
All right, we'll move on.
Dazzo would have come back and Bully would have switched the filter to number 1 on 18 dB on a sunny day.
I love it.
Oh, man.
All right. So
Bully, you live by the what? The shutter, and you die by the shutter.
You live by the shutter, you die by the shutter. I heard Pearsonitis earlier, and that's a real thing. Like, and it's contagious, and it's hard to get rid of. And I remember ATFOI. I remember I came up with that, and
all over it. We'll just say all over it.
All over it. When you're all over a play, you're ATFOI. Yep. Use your imagination. I mean,
yeah.
Just once.
Just once.
Just once.
Just once.
There's times that I'd be at a game and Pearson would be at a game, not on a Friday night per se, just like a regular. And I'm like, and it's a big game, and I just look over at him going, well, he's got to go. Like, what is he doing? Like, and I would even be on the Illinois side thinking he's got an extra 10, 15 minutes than I do. Like, this guy's, but I couldn't leave because he wasn't leaving. And I'm just like, it was almost like a stare down with like, you couldn't, like, we were at a duel and we were going to draw. I'm like, oh man. And then finally we would get in the car, run to the car together going, what do we do? I remember Sherrard wrestling on a Saturday, as clear as can be. We jump in the cars, we're running out to our cars, and we're both like idiots. Like, we're never going to make it back on time. And we did it to ourselves. Like, we only did it to ourselves.
Why do we do this to ourselves?
Pearsonitis.
Another
Pearsonitis once again. Pearsonitis once again. So
yeah. So the moment we all remember is like, you knew it was a chaotic Friday when like I would be back editing and Pearson was not back yet. Now keep in mind, Pearson is the one who has to go on set and anchor and like, run the show. And he'd run in and it was always why do we do this to ourselves? And you were in full scramble mode. Oh, it was perfect. It's a thing of beauty. So, okay. So we were talking a little bit about that competition, but how about the competition in shooting vid? So we talked about, what kind of, I think all of us got competitive with each other for that same reason, right? We all wanted to outdo each other. What do you, before we get into this conversation, I will go back to my humble beginnings. 2005, week 1, I go cover Decorah at Maquoketa. Pearson was sending me to the big games back then, over on the Iowa side of the river.
It's called paying dues, boy.
Yep. One game. I only had one game responsible for. I go out, I shoot it, I come back. I feel pretty good, right? And I have no idea that like years later, I'd be trying to shoot like 3 games in a night and, feedback from the Red Apple and Rock Falls, all the stuff. This was, I still thought, chaotic when I'm going to one game, staying for half of the game. I'm there forever. Anyway, I get back, I shoot all my stuff, feel pretty good about it, edit together. Ross Farrow, the photographer who you referenced, we're sitting in edit booth B, and I'm the young guy. Like, I want some helpful tips, and I want like the veteran to look at my stuff. And I'm like, hey, Ross, can you look at my stuff, look at my video to see how I shot? And in my mind, like, I'm feeling pretty good. Like, it's steady. It's not too dark. Like, it's in focus. I got all of it, right? And he looks at it and doesn't really say very much. And at the end, he's like, yeah, that's great, but it's too bad the zoom's broken on your camera. So I learned the lesson real quick that day that I was humbled very early.
Wasn't it ants running on a brick? That's what it was. You had ants running on a brick.
Ants running on a brick. That's right. So I was thinking about like things that I like still do when I walk the sidelines. I don't remember which one of you told me, but I never, when a play starts, I never move my feet. My feet might as well be in cement. And now it's almost come to bite me because I've almost been run over a couple times.
Wow.
But like, I do not move my feet. And so like, I will even go as far as like, I'll have my feet facing the field and I'll turn my body. And then as hopefully if the play develops, I'm going with it the whole way and I'm not moving my feet just to stay steady. And I remember Bully, we always talked about, you'd like turn yourself into a corkscrew. You'd get like so far twisted up.
You're like an action figure. You just swivel at the waist.
Yes.
Your bottom is planted and the things we would do to get shots and the only time you could move is the patented walk up after
the
a
walk
touchdown.
up.
Yep, the walk up.
Oh,
but otherwise, I'm like you, Greg.
That was the Bully walk up.
That was the Bully thing.
Describe the Bully walk up.
It's
90% a touchdown, Bully, right?
Yeah.
90%.
90% it's a touchdown. They're coming at you, or it's a running play, kind of a goal line. They come over and hand the ball to the ref, and they're celebrating. You can kind of do the walk up,
You get right up in there.
Little shimmy walk. You're not really moving too much, but you want to kind of get their attention, so they
Absolutely.
do something for the camera.
Speaking of mugging for the camera, Cuff, you got the greatest shot I've ever seen. I'm not exaggerating. It's my favorite shot I've ever seen. 2 years ago, Caden Drosty from West Central, running back, runs right past you. Describe the play. Describe what you were thinking like as it happened.
It was a playoff game on a Saturday. I don't even know who they were playing, but he gets the pitch and he busts it to the near sidelines. And I'm 35 yards down the sidelines and he's outrunning everybody. And all of a sudden he comes running by and throws up deuces. As he comes running by, like looks at the camera, throws up deuces and continues in. I was like, oh my gosh, did he just do that? I mean, I saw it happening. And I go back and look at the video. I'm like, he sure did. So I think that's Sunday. I had him on the Score Sunday. And I asked him, I go, hey, did you see the camera? He goes, I just saw a camera. I don't know who it was. I figured I got to do something cool. So I threw up deuces on my way to the end zone. I was like, that was the coolest thing I've ever seen. Somebody actually recognized the camera, threw up deuces, and scored a touchdown.
It was awesome. So if you go actually right now on our YouTube channel, View from the West YouTube channel, it's the screen grab, the thumbnail of the like highlights from 2022. So it's right there as a thumbnail. It's great. So
you said he's from West Central?
Yeah. West Central, yeah.
And how'd the call go on that, Cuff? He's at the 20, the 30, the 40, the 30, the 20.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, man. Yeah. So, Bully, we talked about keeping our feet planted, but we always want to, you don't want to get run over. Now, if you're Nick Bull and you're at a Cambridge Galena game, sometimes the player ends up worse than the photog does. So, do you remember this play?
Oh, I absolutely do. It was just, one of those epic Saturdays you live for, not only as a high school football fan, but a photog. It's beautiful out, and Cambridge is such a great setting. It was the Vikings and the Pirates back, and then it was the year Galena went all the way to state. Stock, you and I got a story about that Galena run here a little later.
Are you shooting on 250 shutter?
I was gonna say.
It just depends, maybe.
Probably 500.
Probably.
500.
But it's like it's down inside like the 15-yard line, a little rollout pass to the tight end. Tight end catches it. And then I was working by myself because I think I took gear home the night before and didn't come, pick up an intern. So I was working by myself, and I honestly didn't didn't see it, but felt this presence coming, and he took me out. But in the process, I landed on top of him, and I just heard him go. Didn't hurt the camera. Got to play. It was just that's the only time I ever got taken out. That of all the times, that was the only time. But
that's 55 Nick Bull on the tackle.
That's right.
I think we use that as a Nat sound break too. The bully.
All right. Any other good photog stories, like shooting video? Dazzle, you got anything good? I mean, besides when you like stepped in my shot?
Are we gonna do this?
We all have that story.
If the sideline goes out, you go out, and then you go out even further.
So
right?
Here's the thing. I will admit, pretty competitive guy. And, back then we wanted to get the shot, right? And my rule always was there's the sideline, and then there's that line like 3 feet back or whatever it is. I always stood on that line. I just always figured if we don't move, then we're not going to get in each other's way if we all stand on the same plane. To Dazzle's point.
Yeah, but if the sideline steps out.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. But when I look back, so Dazzle
He's still
stepped
not
in my
buying
shot. Dazzle stepped in my shot. I didn't like it. We exchanged words, pleasantries. And I remember I was with the intern I was with. It was a guy. It wasn't like a young intern. It was Kyle. Like Kyle Carresco.
Kyle Carresco, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So Kyle's with me. So he's a teacher out at Aledo, and he's there with me. And we get back in the car, and he's like, I mean, at first I kind of like thought you guys were joking, but then it kind of sounded like you were both actually kind of mad. It was like, yeah, it's kind of a little mad. But
I remember I was with a buddy of mine whose kid was playing at Alleman, and he's just like, man, I didn't think it was like this down here. I'm like, it's not normally. And he goes, does he just not like you? I go, no, I think I like, he's a good guy. I like him, but it's just didn't go. I think you did apologize.
Yeah, I probably did. Yeah,
yeah,
I did. That Catholic guilt. No, of course I didn't. No, of course.
Sounds like the North Fulton Galena playoff game that Bully referenced a few minutes ago.
Semifinal game.
What? Take me back to that. So, okay, real quick though. So, what the funniest part of that story is, the whole thing happens, and now looking back, it was a Rochester. Was it an Alleman touchdown?
No, it was. It didn't matter.
Either way, the game was like
46 to nothing.
The game was so far out of reach. I'm never going to use that highlight anyway.
And I'm pretty sure it wasn't even an Alleman play. I think it was a Rochester, like their 6th touchdown of the game. That's why I was just like, wow, like I didn't think it was that big of a deal.
Yeah,
I was surprised they even stepped out because we didn't need it. But
all right,
principle.
Bully, yeah, exactly. I'm a man of principle. I didn't like it in the moment. It's okay. We're all good now. We're friends now.
Are we?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Take me back to that North Fulton. Was it North Fulton and Galena semifinal game?
Yes.
Nick Bull shooting and Brian Stocking there on the scene as the intern.
Brian Stocking is the best, road buddy for these trips and the best intern. I always loved the playoffs because you didn't have the zone.
Yep.
So there's a chance that Stock was going to go with you. And I always loved shooting with Stock. It was always a great time. And it was a highly contested, heated battle at North Fulton and Princeton. And it was just small school football at its peak. It's semifinal Saturday, right?
That was our second game of the day because we were with Pearson and Orion for Orion's semi. And then Pearson told you and me to go to North Fulton for Galena.
Yep.
And we get there, and the first half is scoreless. Defensive battle, halftime. We're talking with Wet Dog at halftime.
My son-in-law.
Yeah, Dan Pearson's son-in-law. There's a reference. Yep. Yeah, there you
and
go.
See the competition pull up. I'll let Bully take it from there.
Oh, it was a former employee. I think Dazzle, you probably worked with him, but I'm not going to name names. But he was just kind of smug and was just getting in shots and stuff. And I'm looking at Stock and I'm like, what's going on here? And then you're in North Fulton I mean, that they're not even a school anymore. They've changed the name, and that's not close to Davenport, Iowa. So that's lingering in the back of your head. You know, you got to get back. But those playoff Saturdays were the pot, you know, of gold at the end of the rainbow of the season. Like, we live for those, you know, and I don't know. I loved having Stocking along for the ride on those.
I remember if North Fulton would have won that game, I said I was going to shave my head. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Galena pulls away. They win like 19-6 or something like that. It was a 3 touchdown game. And the final minute, one of the Galena's running out the clock, and one of the North Fulton players spears one of the Galena kids. And it was a chippy finish to the game. So Bully knew that there was going to be some words said at the handshake line. So Bully's in position. He gets them, and Galena's coach was not happy with the North Fulton coach, and North Fulton coach wasn't happy with Galena. So now we're getting the interviews, and we've got I think it was one of the players, and I'm standing there with the mic stand, holding in front of him. All of a sudden, the competition comes over, almost tries to jostle Bully out of the way, and throws his mic stand in front of mine on our shot. So I take my mic stand and hit his mic stand, so that way our mic stand was right in front of it.
Man, the players are getting chippy. Stocking's getting chippy.
You don't knock our mic stand out of the way. I mean, all I had to do was wait 2 minutes. We were almost done. We were like on our last question with the kid. All I had to do was wait for us to get done, and we would have been out of there. And no, he's got to try and muscle his way in. It's like going, that's not happening. You don't muscle out the bi-state champion.
One more story with Stock.
Yes.
I remember it was a Sterling playoff game at Maple Park, Caneland.
Yep.
And the iconic opening shot, there was one of those heating things, and Stock's got his hands up and shivering, and the snot's rolling down. It was a cold one. It was a still cold night, but it was cold. And I remember we are flying back to the station. We have plenty of time to get the stuff on, but you guys, Cuff, Pierce, were holding a two-way to the radio call of the Sterling game that we had just covered. We couldn't get it in the car, but you guys held the radio, the two-way up to the call, and it's something I'll always remember, Stock.
Yeah. And then we stopped before we got back to the station. We pulled over to listen to the end of the game.
Yeah, I couldn't take it.
Listen to it.
Bully could not continue driving and listening. He was too emotionally invested.
We were like 2 blocks from a block and a half from the station.
Yeah.
And the game's like in double or triple overtime. And so Bully says, we got to listen to the end of this. We pull over. We can see the station from where we parked. And we listen to the end of the game.
Oh, it's great. All right, so Cuff, the dedicated individual you're working, preparing a newscast, and you're on the podcast all at the same time. So before you have to go, what we talked a lot about shooting, and Kory Kuffler, affectionately known as the Rainmaker, you could see the dimples on a football. You'd be so tight. What have you learned over the years? What do you think about every time you go out and shoot to get yourself in the right spot to know you're going to, have the shot you want?
Well, I always want to be at least 30 yards downfield. And I learned that from Dan. The further downfield you are, the more they're going to run at you. You can see their face more. You can see them coming at you longer. I think that's important. I'd rather see their face and them running at you than their back running away from you. If you get it for 5 yards, that's fine. But Pearson would shoot so tight. Like, you could see sweat beads rolling down the face of somebody as they come running by you, which I thought was awesome. Yep. But yeah, I figure if you can't see laces in the air, and see that it says Wilson on the football, what are you shooting? You might as well get a little tight and give them something to be excited about.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that's the best part of Friday nights is getting to the game, shooting the game, just the excitement of it, and just that small little part that we bring from that game to the station, to the highlights, to show those players doing something great. You know, it may not be a big deal to us at the time, but to their parents, to the kids, whatever, it's awesome. So yeah, to me, it's just like challenge yourself, you know, sometimes see how tight it can go. And sometimes it's not going to work. I'm going to admit it. You miss a shot because you get fooled on that triple option and they run the other way and you're like, oh, completely blew that play. But it happens. But that's what makes it fun.
I always
never happened to me. I've never.
I will say
no. That's the best part is when something like that happens. I'd almost rather have that than it
Call
shot
out.
well. Like when Jerry Burt would come back, he'd be like, Daz, I missed this touchdown, but I got 2 others. I'm like, I want to see all
the
3.
human net wipe.
Yeah, I want to do that so I can call you out. So yeah, I'm all about calling people out.
you
Greg,
always
I think that you have to reference the infamous Alito plays that Bully. We knew there were like 3 touchdowns. We only saw 2 of them. Please.
yes, please,
Absolutely.
Pearson.
Absolutely. I'm gonna put the best product out there I can.
There's some poor kid for Elwood Rova that played in that co-op back in the day. His 50-yard touchdown is nowhere to be seen because Bully got faked out and went to the wrong running back.
Didn't happen if I didn't shoot it. That's just the way that's the credo I adopted. But no, Pierce set the bar for shooting. There's no doubt about that. And there's been some great guys across the years. You know, Chad Doran, Ross Farrell, those guys bought in and totally loved shooting, and shot really good stuff. Like, you know, when I was younger than those guys and they had more experience, like I was trying to shoot like them. And then Kuffler came along, and then I mean, Kuffler was the standard. And I would say I thought I beat Kuffler. I might've got him a week or 2, but Kuffler to me is he's the rainmaker, man. He's the standard in my opinion.
I think you coined that term too.
I did. I own the rights to it.
Yeah. He'll be selling merch.
I'll say this: the greatest game I ever shot,
Yes,
would be the Bureau Valley DeCoin football game. I think it was a semifinal down in DeCoin with Garrett Barnes.
Yes,
and that was by far the best football game I probably ever shot.
I was gonna ask you about games that stand out to you. I remember the highlights of that. It looks like he gets kind of like trapped behind a couple defenders, and it literally looks like he like climbs up an invisible staircase and like jumps over somebody. It looks so weird.
Oh yeah. By far, it was like a 6-hour drive to get down to DeCoin, as you would know, Greg, because you went to school down in Carbondale, obviously. And it was a 6-hour drive. And I just remember I got 6 hours to drive this back. I got back at 10 o'clock and edited and got it all done.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, those were the fun things. I'm sure that all of us remember getting back late. Somebody, hey, open the back door, and you're sprinting down the hallway to the edit bays and just jumping into an edit bay. Just get me ready. Or throwing tapes down the hallway.
We throw the tape, you just slide it on the floor.
Slide them down the floor to get them on, and
you cue it up after the countdown, even that tight, you know.
Yes,
that close, you know.
Yeah.
Well, Cuff, before you hop off, let's pivot Dazzo real quick to the score. And when Cuff came over, and then eventually I came over, and Stocking, and then at one point it was literally all of us, you know, Pearson shooting, I'm shooting, and Stock's there, and everybody. Dazzo, for you, as you were trying to build up the score, what did it mean to get, you know, when Cuff came over and had a chance to do sports with you? Like, what do you remember about that kind of time when that all happened?
Well, for me, it just was like vindication that like they couldn't beat me, so then they had to come join me. I think that was obviously the number one thing that I took from it, and that's basically the only thing I took from it.
Oh, okay, great.
No, it was just because Cuff and I tell this to anybody who will listen, is that we never had a major argument. Like we didn't. Like there's times I guarantee we disagreed or whatever, but like, and I always say like 95% of that is Cuff and like 5% is me, because he's just, I don't know if people knew this, but Cuff's a little more mature than I am. So it was
we've picked up on that in this show.
He is your older brother, right?
Yes, right. So all credit goes to him. But like, no, it just, and I remember talking to him when he was coming over. I was like, this is not, and I think Cuff will attest to it. I'm like, this is not like a sports director and weekend guy type of thing. I'm like, this is just a team. Like I never once said, hey, this is what you should go get on the weekend or all that kind of stuff. It was just, we kind of bounced things off. We all had our lanes. We both knew that like, this is what I was doing on a Friday night. This is what he was doing for the Friday nights to get ready, all those kind of things. And then, yeah, like it was great when and we wanted Stockpile to jump in. And by that point, like Dan was starting to, there was a while where he was kind of shooting video for both. And then like he was just shooting for us and we were showing his FCA stories and it was a great relationship. And then Greg came over and we were trying to get stocking and he wouldn't do it. I remember like Greg's like, I'll talk to him. And he's like, no, he's loyal. And I'm like, but he's being loyal to call letters. Like you're loyal to people.
No,
like,
he had some people. There were some people there that were working hard that he was still loyal to,
but then we broke out the checkbook.
Biases.
Then we got a checkbook out and we gave him like a lot of money, like a lot. No, I'm kidding. So, and then when he came by, no, there has been recent years that like it, and maybe not as recent because it was more when Greg was there, but even recently I was like, man, like this has all come full circle. Like I'm now, I look at my sheet and it's like Dan Pearson's shooting this. Cuff is shooting this. Greg is shooting this. Like it was Stockpile's taking my stores. I remember one of the things when Cuff came over, and maybe even when Greg did too. Cuff, I think the first couple Fridays was like, well, who do I call the scripts back to? And I'm like, that's just not how we do it. And like Greg might have been the same way. And I'm like, there's no Stockpile waiting. Like there's no like him to take your script and then I'm pretty sure change your script is what he normally did, I think. But but like it's just you like got to shot sheet it and go. And that's just how we do it. And so there were a few things like that just were different, a little nuances. But other than that, like it was like, wow, these guys are now, I'm on their team finally. And for a while, for the longest time, I was public enemy number one, obviously. I just found out tonight, which is really, I don't know if I'll be sleeping this evening, but so that was like gratifying and cool all at the same time. And it was one of those things where like, we also, I felt like changed what we didn't redo the highlight zone. Like the score is completely different now. And it's also resources, technology, all of those kind of things. And I'll give credit to Alan Baker. Like he's the one when he was our news director and when Cuff and I got rolling, maybe the sports director before me, like it wasn't a smooth sailing. So like Cuff and I, you could just tell we're in sync. And he's like, he said to us one time, he's like, I don't want to have to talk to you guys unless it's about like my kid playing sports. Like he was just totally trusted us to do whatever. And my big story I always talk about was the pandemic because they still sold the show for, was it a half hour, Cuff?
Yeah, I think so. Still a half hour. Yeah, it was.
And so we had a half hour show with no Illinois side. The Iowa side was playing, the Illinois wasn't. And like we both kind of talked and it's like, and this isn't being mean to management, but we can either, and I tell my kids this, you can either sit back and wait and have them tell you something you don't want to do and complain about it, or we can brainstorm and think of something different to do. And then we started throwing around the grill and the grill changed things and we were outside and it was more leisurely. So it's like I felt like adapted or evolved what Dan started way back in the day. We slowly evolved with it. And then I always give Greg credit because I think he's fully evolving it more with the post podcasts and people who want that niche about afterwards, that's there for the taking as well too. So I don't know if I answered any question that you talked about, Greg.
But we didn't have to stay for the interview after a game either, because we started doing Zooms and getting people on that way, and we talked to people on the bus, and there was just different ways to interact with people, and that was the cool part. You know, and honestly, we would tell people like, well, who should we watch on Friday night? We're like, I don't care, go watch whoever you want early, but then flip to us at 10:30 at that point, because there was no competition at that point. Which was great for us because we were the only thing going on at 10:30.
Yeah, well, they gave people a little more time to get home, I think, too. And that's the thing is, of course, and you know, and Bully, everybody like with microphones, like that was the biggest change of the pandemic was like we got used to hearing Zoom. Like it wasn't like, you know, before the pandemic, it was like, oh, their microphone, that's hollow, that's Nat. And like now that's not. We got to a point last year where I didn't even know who we were going to talk to coaching wise until the end of the night. We didn't know who was going to win or lose. So I would contact like 4 or 5 coaches and say, hey, if you win, we're going to have you on. And then we'd just get back and I'd say stockpile who won, and we'd shoot them a text and they'd know it and they'd hop on. Those are things I always joke that Dan Burrich, who was my sports director originally, and not the one I've been making fun of, the one that like, I respect I love Dan Burrich, but like he would always say, like, you know, you got to give them something that they want and do it correctly. And like, that's the kind of stuff but I would always say, like, if he saw what we did now, he would be blown away, because we talk about technology. The Peoria story is fantastic, Dan. Like, that's how we used to do things. And now we're getting emails, we're Cuff's editing on set and changing stuff on set. So technology helped us out a ton as well.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
I think the biggest thing, to backtrack a little bit, was when I was there and we were able to go to a half hour and push back to where you did a little sportscast in the regular show, and then they were able to give us that full 30 minutes. So we pretty much preempted Kimmel. Kimmel would come on after our show was over at whatever time, 11, I guess it would have been. I think that was huge, because I think that was something that was kind of thinking outside the box, or doing something a little bit bigger, kind of pushing it a little more. And I loved, like, as we got more creative with mic'd ups, like kind of getting, that took a little bit of like, I remember, like, you got to be a little confident to go to a coach and say, can we get in your locker room and have a microphone on you? No one had ever done that before in this area.
But the thing with that, Greg, is, and I kind of talked to Dan about it on my show the other day, is it was because of the relationships you form with coaches that they had no qualms with doing it. And I'll go back even further. I told Dan, I'm like, I can remember Vic Boblet, me being at and I love Vic, but me being there at Rock Island as a youngster and be like, man, this guy likes me. Like, we're reforming a pretty good friendship and then, like, as I went to leave and shook his hand, Dan would roll in and give him a hug. And it'd be like, as much as like I thought I was making an inroads, which I was, like, Dan and TC had been there forever. And then it flipped to the point now where, like, Cuff and I all of a sudden, and Greg, were like the guys had been there forever. So it was easy to call a coach because they trusted you to put a microphone on them. I love it. I would get coaches that be like, hey, can you make sure that you don't put on anything that's inappropriate? I'm like, yeah, because if I did, I'd get in trouble. You know, like, still the best one to this day is when Guy Derricks shaved his head on the mic'd up and didn't even tell. And then did Travis shoot it? No, Jordan Franks shot
Jordan Franks, yes.
And then he didn't tell us about it. And so we didn't see it until he actually did it on air. And both me and Cuff were like, oh my gosh, like our mouth just dropped.
Best thing ever. This. Yes. Before I go, let me tell one story with that Nick Bull and I from the Highlight Zone. It was a play. I believe this was a playoff game, Bully. You and I went to Princeville, and I don't remember who they played.
United.
It might have been United. Okay. So we go to Princeville on a Friday night. I think the game was a Friday night. We drive down there. I think we shot the first half, maybe even the first 3 quarters in a live truck. And we're like, we've got to go. So you're driving. I'm editing in the back of
Unit 6
and on tape to tape. I'm editing on tape to tape. We don't have digital yet. We're not editing on computers. And I think we get to, was it the Alwood exit?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it's
the Woodhall exit.
Yeah, the Woodhall Alwood, Woodhall exit. We pull off, and where that Love's gas station is now. There was a gas station, but it really wasn't a gas station, kind of like a truck stop, pit stop, stay the night place. Yep. All I remember is I had no idea where we're at. I think I called Pearson. I was like, yeah, I think we're by Galesburg. And Bully's like, nope, blew by that 10 miles ago. I'm like, all right, well, we're getting close. And then we pull into the truck stop, and all I know is Bully hits the biggest pothole we've ever seen, and that thing, we just go bouncing everywhere in the back seat. I'm like, he's like, you good? I'm like, yeah, we're good. We're good. Well, throw the mask, get the video back, and we made it somehow. It's crazy.
Weren't you in like a roller chair? So like anytime you're sitting in a roller chair in the back, like forget seatbelts. We don't even,
Yeah, we get an accident. I'm rolling all over the place.
Well, the editing system is as big as a suitcase too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great Friday night. So
it was, Cuff. Thanks for bringing that up. I had forgotten about that, but there was
For
There was
30
land
seconds
speed
of video
records
too,
broken.
right? 30
For
seconds.
30 seconds of video, absolutely.
The
Absolutely.
last year or two that I was at the
All right,
zone.
hold on, Stock. Thanks, everybody. This has been a lot of
Bye,
fun. I
Cuff.
appreciate it.
See you,
See
All
y'all.
right, everybody go watch WQAD.
Hey, Cuff,
I'm flipping it over right now.
Put my super underneath your name tonight just to mess with people.
Nobody knows the difference. Nobody
Come
knows
on.
the difference.
Yeah, right? Just for fun.
Kory Randazzo.
Thanks, Cuff. It's
All
great.
right.
See
See
you,
you guys.
Cuff.
Yeah.
Hey, man.
Take care, Rainmaker.
All right, what do you got, Stock? You're itching to talk.
The last year that I was at Channel 6 was Channel 8 had already gone to 30 minutes. We would get done at 10:35, and by 10:40, I was turned around watching Channel 8 going, they beat us again. They beat us on this one. They beat us on that one. I mean,
That's
they
a
were
great.
doing
That's the
for
best
30
story
minutes.
Stock's ever told. That's the first and only story that I've loved hearing from Stock. Tell it again.
The 30 minutes that they did was just outstanding. I'm like going, why can't we do that? Why, and it was just, I mean, they just totally
I did get
the chapter.
like I think Dan said to me one time, and you can tell me if I'm crazy, but like you're like, that's what I always wanted to do. It's like I wanted to do and we got it from Scott Sable and KCRG. They were doing it and they were preempting Kimmel. And I'm like, how do you guys do it? And they're like, we just preempt Kimmel. And so I went to Alan Baker and I said, we can easily do this because I'm tired of cutting stuff and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it worked out good. But like that's the beauty of it, is just gotta and we talked too that like Friday nights, because of Dan, like people know there's a standard, like that's what you have to do. Like you have to continue to build on it and do on it and stuff like that. So
All right, so we've talked a lot about photography. I think sit back and get comfortable, everybody. We have to talk about the history of Brian Stocking.
that might put people to sleep.
Now, let's end the debate right now. Is it stats guy or staff guy?
It was staff guy at Iowa State.
But you were doing stats.
Yes.
So then it would be stats guy.
No, it was staff guy. All right. I was doing stats for I was working at Iowa State. I was in sports information. And during the basketball games, our job, because we didn't have computers like they do now, was at every timeout, we would go with we had a piece of paper. We would write down like the free throws, field goals, score, etc. And then we would take it over to radio. We had one person who did Iowa State. They went around to the Iowa State table, gave it to Pete Taylor and Eric Eft. I would go around and give it to opposing radio. So we would, like Kansas, Baylor, whoever. I would go give it to them and walk back. We're playing Baylor. This is my senior year. We're top 10 team, and I'm walking back, and at the last time out, a bunch of fans hold up the word staff guy, STAFFGUY, and as I'm walking back, and I'm like going, this is great. This is, I mean, it was part of a magical regular season at Iowa State.
Pierce, can you do
I have to.
Can you do the face?
Stock's probably right, but he's 50% of the population at Iowa State said he is stats guy. But I think it's a fact because I saw a license plate at a game on the same night, Clinton, North Scott, and DeWitt in between, and all three places it said staff guy on the license.
All right, let's get into that story real quick. This is a football podcast. That was during basketball season. Dazzo, you ever heard this story? Do you remember this?
Yeah, I think I have.
So I don't know how it started, but it was me and Bully being a little mischievous. And
A little?
When you have a lot of time in the mornings.
Yeah.
Listen, the highlight zone in my run, I thought really took off when you started on that morning shift.
Okay, yeah.
And I kind of welcomed you into the fold. I said, I'm going to show you the ways.
Hold on.
But
Well,
true
real
story,
quick.
you did not. Go ahead.
Greg revealed something, I think, on our show today, wasn't it?
Yes.
That you didn't want Greg to be there in the morning, and that you were
At first.
the mornings.
You didn't want another photog in the mornings, right?
Yeah, I didn't at first, but when they started doing all that different stuff, we had to have two photogs there.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. But yeah, but I thought we really took off zone wise.
Yep.
We spent so much time. I was like showing Greg, like, you got to check out these highlights from this night. This was an epic night. Let's go back and watch this one. Go back and watch this one. And we would just watch highlight videos. We would edit highlights. We would start planning out stuff for Pearson on Pearson's days off and be like, okay, we think we kind of know what we're going to do. And most of the time it was the games that, that we covered. Pearson knew what we were looking for. And I really thought the zone really kind of blossomed with Greg coming in, yearning to learn. And then being able to teach him was pretty fun.
Sounds like you guys had a lot of work to do in the mornings.
I'm going to tell you one story. I mean, the statute of limitations is up, but when the war started over in Afghanistan.
I was going to say World War II or Afghanistan.
No, whatever you want to call it. When that went down, we had to be at the station in case, news broke and we took off. Well, after you edit the stuff in the morning, what are you going to do? You ain't going to sit and watch the world news. So you catch a snooze and edit booth B, lights dim down, feet up from 5:30 to 8, when people start showing up, and then it's like, all right, I'm good. I'm ready to go.
I love it.
Slept a lot during that time and got paid for it.
And
so
you're not apologizing for it now.
No.
So to backtrack, to give backstory, when I started on the morning show. So photographer alongside of Nick Bull. So we were waking up at 2 a.m., getting into the station about 2:30 or 3 o'clock, working till noon if we were lucky. Or it was always hey, hook a brother up and go get this extra story at 11 o'clock in Clinton, so you're not out of there till 1 o'clock or whatever.
Yeah, they're doing the hokey pokey at the K side. Go get a Vosot and Pelosi.
So anyway, like Pearson, like you referenced, we do this for free. Bully and I didn't do it for free, but we were still waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning, going to that morning shift, getting off at noon, going home, maybe taking a nap, eating lunch, coming back in about 4 o'clock, grabbing cameras, going to Princeton, going to Bureau Valley, going to wherever. I look back at the grind that it was, and it never felt like work. It never felt like overbearing or too much, I never batted an eye at it. I wanted to be there.
I worked that shift to have weekends off.
Yep. And
to be able to do what we did with the highlight zone.
Yeah.
And shooting sports on Saturdays if Dan needed it. That was the reward. That was the best part about that job. Not the other stuff, not the news side of it. It was doing that stuff. That's why I stayed there and worked that shift.
Yeah. Dazza, what you had your
I was
hand?
going to say one of my favorite things over at 8 was just doing we still do them. And even when I wasn't there during basketball season, was score lunches. And we have people that don't work at the station at all anymore. In fact, they're mainly people that don't work at the school. But our thought process was same thing you guys were talking about. We get in, and Cuff and I would get in by 11:30, and then we'd go to lunch because you're so busy during the day. And if you're a photographer, you're finishing your shift and then running off, and you weren't going to eat again until we started them when we actually got pizza from Harris. So we always had pizza from Harris afterwards. And so it was a long day. So we'd all go grab a buffet. It had to be a buffet. And then, of course, they got the brilliant idea of you guys should go live on the 11 a.m. show. So then we had to be in by 10:15, 10:30, grab some lunch and go. But like you just said, Greg, we would work from 10 o'clock in the morning to 1 o'clock the following, what is that? 14 hours, 15 hours.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even, I couldn't care less. It was I didn't care. It was part of the day. The day didn't drag on. You talk about some people, they go to work and they work for that long. Oh, it was such a long day. I wish it was a long day. It went too fast. I didn't have enough time to get everything done. So that's the cool part of Fridays in general too. And that's one thing we still do is the score lunches, which Greg participated in and still kind of does every now and then too. So you got to eat. Yeah.
Gotta eat.
So we'll go back to the original story. Bully and I somehow came up with the idea. We found a screwdriver probably in the engineering room. I don't know. and Stocking got in and he started doing his thing. He's talking to Pearson, getting everything set up. So
What time would he get to the station, Pearson, on Fridays?
3:30, 3:40, something like that. He put his
with how many briefcases?
So two or three briefcases and probably 3 wallets too. Because of Walt Garrison.
He's up
Walt
to
Garrison
4.
had
He's
people.
up to 4 bags and briefcases these days, fellas.
Yeah, we'll get into that. We'll get into what goes into those. So we decided, let's get the license plates off his car. I don't know why we decided we had to take his license plates, but I took him to the game I was going out to shoot. Bully, you took him somewhere on your games. And I remember the opening shot, I had all the cheerleaders put their pom-poms in the middle and shake them. So it's this tight shot, and all you see is the pom-poms, and then the girls pull them all back and reveal the license plate. And man, Stock, you were rolling out of your chair.
Oh.
I'm not pleased.
I was like a rocket ship going off. I was like a rocket ship.
You were none too pleased. You didn't find it as humorous as we did.
Yep. I think Twinkie went out that night too. I think Randy Beery had him, and he was
That's right.
opening cutaway in 2 different games, I believe.
That's why Twinkie the Kid doesn't come back.
That's Stock, we love you. All right, so let's hear
That was not a fun.
Let's hear the
blood pressure went up to about 500 over 350.
Yeah. All right, let's reel it back in, Stock. Let's get back to how did you wind up in the sports office at Channel 6? I'll let Dan tell his side of the story too, but how did you end up as an intern at Channel 6?
Well, spring of 1996, I was going in my senior year at Iowa State, and I needed to do an intern. I wanted to be an internship. And so I went around to the local stations. I went to 8, went to 4, went to 6. Met Pearson. It was the NCAA tournament first round, and then we talked, and Pearson said in the spring when you come back from college, come on in, and you can be an intern. So I interned that summer, and then Pierce was needing help a couple of times in '97, so I worked in '97, and then '98 I became full time, and it was that, and the rest is history.
Pierce, what do you remember about a young, eager Brian Stocking showing up, a history major nonetheless, showing up wanting to help out?
It was an adventure every time he'd go out with us, and he did want to stay back and type stuff, and it was weird. But I remember towards the end of the internship, I think it was Bick's weekend, and we went, "Hey, Stock, let's go down and get the people picking up their packets or something." We're outside the River Center there, and there's a tricycle on the sidewalk, and Stock, hop on. And we did get video of him trying to ride around. I don't know if it was that summer. It might have been the summer after at Tug Fest. Somebody shot him singing the theme from Friends, and a shad fly the size of a brooch was on his entire time. And people were just walking by looking at him like, what is happening here? So
Stock, have you ever karaoke'd since then?
No, I was an innocent young boy at the time. But but no, yeah, it was coming back, here's the thing with when I started working, when I got there, I would be sent out to games and that.
Yep.
I remember going to Preston, going to Central DeWitt, going to all over. And I remember we had a person that was doing the scripts at the time, and she was a senior, and Dan knows who I'm talking about. And she wanted to go out and do games. So Dan's like, all right, we can send you out. And he says to me, he comes up to me and says, I would like you to stay back and type scripts and get scores. I said, perfect. And Dan was very gracious. He didn't put many restrictions on me. But he did say
he regretted that later.
Yeah. Darn you, Pearson.
What he taught me was never call out a kid. Always look for the positive in play. If someone makes the interception, don't say, the kid got it who it's not Kory Kuffler was intercepted or Greg
Wow.
Armstrong took the sack. It was always Nick Bull made the sack or Matt Randazzo made the interception.
Man,
always
calling me and Cuff bums, and then Dazzo and Bully get the glory there.
Well, it was either that or Mitch Dormer. So
Who?
I figure I might trigger some bad memories for Mitch,
Yeah,
at Morrison.
Yeah. So Stock, what has kept you coming back year over year? What do you love about a Friday night in the command module, as we've come to call it?
Well, you got to remember, when I was a kid growing up, on Sunday afternoon, appointment viewing was the NFL Today with Brent, Irv, Phyllis, Jimmy the Greek, and you got all sorts of games. And on Friday night, I've got all the games. I got like 15, 20 games going with NFHS, Huddle, the whole shebang.
You're Brent Musburger.
Yeah.
You're looking alive.
Yes, sir.
Without the beer drinking in Lincoln.
Stock. I don't know what was just referenced there.
Musburger got caught with an open container in Lincoln after a Pitt Nebraska game on ABC.
That's a deep cut. That's a reference. All right. Stock. Well, so, okay. Speaking of that, Stock, how many watering holes in Cambridge or Savannah or anywhere else did you have to call to try to get final scores back before the internet?
However many I could find in the white pages.
I love it.
We called a lot of, but back then, there wasn't a lot of, I called a lot of times when I needed to get a score out of Savannah, I would call WCCI. WRMJ was very good with having a lot of scores. Yep. So you just started to work phone numbers. We had a phone tree and trying to find numbers. I remember seeing some numbers for Mount Carroll in a certain desk at the station. Mount Carroll, Mount Morris. That was somebody's desk. Because I would sit in that person's desk on Friday night.
Let's say it. You sat at Tom Cornellis's desk. Let's just lay it out there. There you go.
And he had phone numbers.
No, Tom Cornellis
Morris.
sat at Brian Stocking's desk.
There you go. There we go. Well,
I will say, like when cell phones first came on, the flip phones, we did have a list of every athletic director, every high school, stuff like that. And I remember after like maybe 3 weeks into a season, how come this guy keeps calling me at 20 till 8 looking for scores, And then we would have some scores that were in the first quarter, and it was 10-20. And I think Bully might recollect a Savannah story, because we couldn't find the Savannah when they had lost several in a row. I don't know, Bully, if you can pick that one up.
Yeah, Savannah, which is now the current day West Carroll, was they were in Sports Illustrated, right, Stock? Like for their 64-game losing streak, correct?
Yeah, Rick Riley wrote a piece about them for them losing so many games, but still had kids come out and the school spirit and all that.
Yeah. Stocking was trying to find out the exact number. So I believe a call was made to the QC Times, and I don't know who answered at the Times.
It was
looking for the score.
How many years in a row have the Savannah Indians, or how many games in a row have the Savannah Indians lost? And you could hear the Quad City Times the other end. There's some girls on the line wanting to know about how many games Savannah's lost. It's just an instant, it's a memory, because I was in that room. I remember that call, and it's forever now. And Stock is great. He laughs it all off because it's all in humor. I mean, Friday nights, I remember I'd get home some nights at 3:30, and my wife's like, "Where were you?" I was hanging out with pretty much the pretty laid back crowd. Like, show's over, you sit there 10 to 15 minutes, and then it's boom, let's go watch their show, then our show again, type of deal. And the camaraderie from that was the undeniable part of it, and ribbing Stocking, and
and other camera people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like a certain host of the show had his camera broken on a sideline. I believe it was at Bray Street Stadium.
I did have, I had an official backtracking, and I was probably standing too far out, and he hit the front of my lens, and those old cameras where the batteries were so heavy on the back, it went back over the top and landed, and the battery pack busted off. And it was not. Thanks, Doc, for bringing that up. That was
what he's here for.
Oh, that was a bad one. And here's the funny story. The worst part, but not the worst part. The real kick was I walked back to the car with a broken camera, and in the rush of everything, I look and the back hatch was left wide open. I never even closed it when I went into the game. So sorry about, again, the statute of limitations is up. Like, sorry, sorry, April Samp. I left the news vehicle wide open in the parking lot of Brady Street. Sorry. So,
Pierce, can you tell the story of, I'll just say, Brian Stocking, Iowa State, Hampton, NCAA tournament?
Okay. So what year was that, Stock?
2001.
Okay,
and
2001
was really good that year. They got a number 2 seed, but they had lost in the Big 12 quarters to Baylor. And I'm like going, I don't know how far we're going to go, but we should beat Hampton.
Okay. So we pick it up, and I am covering first round in Dayton, and we're done for the day. It was Matt Vito, another outstanding intern. We're watching the game in the hotel room, and I see pockets in my mind of everybody who worked on the highlight zone watching that game, hoping that Hampton would win because of Stock. They pull off the upset, and I know everybody is celebrating beyond words. And then probably later.
I was celebrating with words. I just can't repeat them. But let's just say the garbage can in my kitchen, I took the garbage that was in the bag out because I didn't want to pick up garbage. And I kicked the garbage can all the way down into the basement, cursing at it. The next day I go to North, and some kid goes, "Mr. Stack, I know what your favorite hotel is." And I go, "What?" And they go, "Hampton." And for a moment, I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh," and it's like, "Oh yeah, the Hampton." And I'm like going, "You got me." And the rest of the day, the kids go, "So, Mr. Stack, you got to stay at the Hampton Inns next time?" I'm like going, Holiday Inn.
But later, Joe Stocking had a good spirit about it. And there is, I think it's on my Facebook page, a video. Before he left, Greg actually saved a ton of stuff.
Yes.
Just dubbing off before I left, before he left. And it's Stock doing the play-by-play in edit booth A of that last play. He's doing play-by-play of the last 30, 40 seconds. And at the end, we're all just busting a gut. And then Stocking took it like a man. It's worth a look.
I always remember him doing the play-by-play alongside of it and bellowing out, "They have a timeout. They don't use it."
No!
4 of them.
Kinsley, no!
I was screaming during the game that night. Watch it go. Call timeout. Call timeout. We got 4 of them. It's not
we all won that night.
Yeah.
No one.
Well, so it's like nights like that, right? Like that, like staying after the show. And Dazza, we did it at Channel 8 too. Like that was what inspired what we now call the Instant Reacts podcast, right? Like you need that wind down after like being out at a game and covering games and talking about all of it. Like that was it. Like that's the instant reacts to watching the show back and seeing what happened and, what you saw that night and how it all played out. I love that. I mean, that's a huge part of why we're all here, right? Is that camaraderie. So yeah, absolutely. It was those were always great times. Bully was one of those falls when we ran to McDonald's up the hill at like midnight and got about 12 McRibs and brought them back. Stock, I think you even sampled a McRib that night.
We did get him to eat McRib that night. I don't know. Did we ever call it anything? At 6, did we ever have a word for it? We just kind of like,
I don't know. We
never called it anything, but you're right. It was kind of the instant reacts. Like we would ask each other about, what they heard or what they seen. It'd be like the first time we all had talked, since before the storm started. And now it's time to relax. And those are my favorite. Those memories are the best. shooting games, shooting state championships. That's fun. It's great. And I love it. And I wouldn't trade it for anything, but those memories staying after on Friday nights and just ribbing each other, that was the best.
So, Bully, you talked about, I hadn't even really considered it yet. You kind of gave me the education in the morning show when, again, we had that downtime when we weren't taking naps. We'd go back and watch the endless amount of tape that Pearson had from old highlight videos of Alito, the Geneseo Green Machine highlight videos. I'm trying to think of Sterling. There was Sterling one, Newman one, so many different highlight videos that we would consume. And you would give me the backstory from Alito, from Geneseo, from all of it. That was great. I mean, to me, I look back and I learned the history of this area through those, videos that Pearson had saved, up in the sports office. So I do distinctly remember when we got the DVD dub station in the back in Master Control. Yes. They had a place you could take betas, tapes, turn them into DVDs. And we were doing that we were cranking those things out, just producing DVDs crazy. Pearson, do you remember when we were copying over some of those Geneseo tapes from the early 90s? Late nights.
I was texting Bully right now. I said, you gotta talk about that. So
I'm looking. Yep. I was thinking the same thing, Pierce. If I remember, I think you said it was you worked Saturday nights, but you would stay late Saturday nights.
I think it was a Friday into a Saturday that we would dub these tapes overnight.
It was, but didn't the 93 with Geneseo Maple Leafs highlight tape, which is one of the all-time great tapes, by the way.
It was like an hour long too. And it was like Vic Boblin always told me, you can go as long as you want. These kids will watch. And I said I don't know, we know the person who was at Master Control.
Yeah. So for background, they usually had one person working overnights, one person that would kind of man Master Control, make sure everything stayed on the air, make sure, all that sort of thing. Yeah. So we would ask him, hey, can you dub these DVDs while you're here overnight? Just let them play in the background and it'll just copy on it. Cause it would copy in real time onto the DVD. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, this was when they had 6 VHS tapes. Then these are the ones they'd give away to the players.
Okay.
I can't stay up another minute. Would you mind popping these out? At the end of the night. And I think he started at one as he left.
Yeah.
And then the rest is history, Bully, if you remember. I mean, I can't remember who was it. You somebody said
it was
I saw that thing at 4 a.m.
Someone said it to you.
Pearson, you always talk about being at church, and somebody stopped you after church and asked if they were showing old replays overnights, and they thought that was really cool. And you said, "What are you talking about?"
That's it. So the tape that was the Beta SX tape that was playing in the 6 however many it was VHS that were recording it, the guy leaves, and that went out over the air.
It's played on Channel 6 airwaves for the whole viewing area to see.
I saw Denny Derricks on TV.
That's right. That was what the reference was.
Yes. That's what it was. I saw
Denny Derricks. It hit me. It's like, oh no. What
But it's great because whoever told you about it was like, yeah, I didn't know you guys were doing that, showing these old highlights. And you're like, what? No, we're not doing that. We're not supposed to do that.
I mean, that was on the air for however long.
It's amazing. Yeah.
And that wasn't the only person who saw it. Somebody else out there saw it like, what is going on here? But
they saw a good one. That's a great highlight video.
That was a good one.
That was one of the all-time great ones.
Yep. And that had one of the players, Bully, you'll know who I'm referencing, that you had when he was the linebacker who was what they used to call it in the dispatch, the pace setter.
Yep.
And what was his name?
Jason Van Acker.
That's right.
The big fullback number 47. Yep. I remember him.
Big star on that team. Yep.
Yeah, that was a good team.
Yep.
Yeah.
Really good team.
All right, so, man, this has been fun. This has been a ton of fun. Do we have any all-time Friday nights that stand out to you above the rest? I know one that Dazzo, you already know where I'm going with it. I went to a Galesburg Quincy game in Galesburg. And this was thank God we had the technology by that time so I could edit. So I remember Josh Eicher, who was like a state champion sprinter, was on the team that year. They were losing to Quincy in the second quarter or into halftime. I'm editing at halftime. I thought, I'm just gonna stick around for a minute and see what happens. Like I got the way to edit and send back. Like I'll just stick around. But this was still the infancy of like sending back, digitally over, using the Wi-Fi hotspot. So I stuck around. They throw a huge, like 50-yard pass. Eicher outruns everybody. They tie the game. Well, it's a really good game. And then you're kind of getting Pearsonitis, like I can't leave now. I gotta stay. So they go into overtime. Galesburg scores. On the defensive side of the ball, they get a strip sack or a fumble recovery. Place goes crazy. It was the new stadium, the first year they built it. Galesburg was pretty good that year. So I don't know what time it was. I had edited like half the highlights, and then I was waiting to edit the other half. I get one interview, and the kid, I asked about the last play because he had scored the touchdown. Then he gets the strip sack. He did everything in the overtime. And then halfway into his first answer, he just said something about, I'm so excited, blah, blah, blah. The team like mobs him, and all he says is, Berg Pride, baby. That's it. Berg Pride. And they all just go nuts. And it was the greatest. Like, that was a Friday night that always stands out to me because it was just so cool to be there in the moment. I got everything sent back on time. I think Dazzle can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think we got it all back. So.
You nailed it. I'm going to, one of mine was a couple years ago. We had started doing the guest griller, and so Pat Anger was with the guest griller, and UT had finally beaten Moline. So like Nick Welch he's been wanting to come, and like for the thing with Morrissey, because they're so close, they would just come on over and be on the grill. And so like Welch, I called him. I was like, hey, do you want to be on? He's like, yeah, can I come over? I'm like, absolutely. He's like, so he was on. We had another couple live shots in the first, like, interview wise, and then Welch and Anger were all on together, and it was really good stuff. And they started talking about Greenwood, and just everything was flowing. The video looked good, and I knew it, and Cuff knew it, but we were super heavy, and like for us that's no big deal, but for producers sitting in the booth, they flip out. We got to our first break, and the producer gets on me and goes, Dazzle, we are 6.5 minutes heavy. And I'm like,
so basically,
right, I don't care.
To the people who don't understand, that means you've gone 6 minutes longer than what your show is scheduled to go. Like,
so I got to cut 6.5 minutes the rest of the way. But my whole thing is like, this is so good, and this is why it's in the first segment, is because you don't put your best stuff in the last segment. So it went great. Of course, the good one for us was we started the grill, and then Julian Vandervelde came over, and he was like, it was the second person to do it, and he was going to make bacon for the bison burgers. I didn't even think about it either, but he had foil, and he's like making bacon. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then during the segment, we're doing highlights, and I look over to Cuff, and I can't even see Cuff. It's just black smoke and just billowing everywhere. And to Cuff's credit, mainly, and to my credit, we just kept going, and we got through everything. And then, of course, when I looked over, I finally saw all the flames coming out, and I'm like, we're in trouble. And I saw our engineer come around the corner with a fire extinguisher. I'm like, oh, now we got really big problems. And yeah, the thing went on fire. We put it out during the break, and we continued the show the rest of the way. And Julian was like horrified. And I'm like, you're good. And he's like, why? And I looked down at my phone, and it was just going crazy with text messages and everything else. I'm like, you just put this on the map. Like, people could care. I mean, now they wonder about the grill. And so it worked out great. And then my last one was not football, but it was basketball season. Everybody remembers the shot by Carson Frakes. I started my day in Indianapolis with Scott Weiss for the Big Ten tournament, and we were not going to cover that game. It wasn't. Everybody back here was busy, and it was an 8:00 start. And I'm like, we have to be at a state semifinal basketball game for Rock Ridge. So we pre-recorded our ins and outs for Illinois when they were down by 20 at the half, knowing they were going to lose. We did our interviews at the very end, hopped in the car, and I edited as we went. We got everything back. We got into Peoria just as the game started, and then we were the only people there when Carson Frakes nailed the 3/4 court shot, and then we went live. You're not supposed to talk to the players. They have the 5-minute cooling off like thing. And I said to Matt Troha, I'm like, hey, I know the rules, but like, is there any chance I can grab him? We can go live right now. And he looked around and he goes, you're the only people here? I'm like, yep, it's just me. He goes, yeah, you deserve it. You get it. And so
That's
that
awesome.
was like, I remember going back from Peoria going like, we started our day in Indy, we finished it here. And that was when Pearson, bless your heart, you're like, we were talking about it like a couple days later. He goes, yeah, it's a shame your Zoom didn't work. And I'm like, I got a backpack, a live backpack on my back, and like I got Scott Weiss tethered to me, so everywhere I go, he's got to go with me. And so I'm like, darn it. But yeah, other than that, no, it was an awesome night. So those are my three that kind of stand out the most to me.
You kind of summed up your career there. Whenever Scott Weiss went somewhere, I had to go with him.
Drag him along.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Stock,
what do you got?
But he was sober that night, so totally different than the rest of my career.
October 15th, 1999, Moline is playing Rocky for the Western Big Six Championship. Moline was undefeated.
All-time night.
And Alito is playing at Rockridge, and it's storming in Rockridge. I think they had to delay the game for a little bit, and then they restarted. Moline's game goes to overtime scoreless. So the final Moline kicks a field goal, and Rocky scores a touchdown to win 6-3 in overtime. And that game, I think, was at Browning Field to make it even more epic. Alito scores late to beat Rockridge 35-31. And Pearson's like showing both games, making sure both games are going. And he had the NFL music playing with John Facenda. I mean, it was just, you couldn't script a night any better. Four premier programs in the Quad Cities, all at their peak of excellence. And, it was just one of those nights where you're like going, this is why you're in the business. That's why you come in and you put in all those nights and you put in all that work in the preseason and during the week for nights that end like that. I mean, it was just, you couldn't script it any better. I mean, if you wrote a script for it, people wouldn't believe it.
What was the date again, Stock?
October 15th, 1999, week 8.
And that was the same night, Assumption Bettendorf and Sterling Geneseo, I think. There was another one.
Rova, Stark County.
Yeah, and it was like we committed to going crazy in all those games, and we did. We had the NFL Films music, and we probably broke copyright laws that night. Everything couldn't have gone any better that night.
Is that considered the greatest highlight zone of all time? I think we've talked about it before.
I think it has to be in the top. It's on the quote unquote Mount Rushmores.
There you go. Bully, what nights stand out to you?
Stock stole my answer, but I'll just plug a little bit in there. That 10-15-99. I was an intern. Hank Strunk was the photog. Rockridge Alito the year after. Rockridge beats them 63-0 in the regular season.
Yep.
Alito comes back to win 25-16 in the state championship. This is the first meeting. It's heated. There was estimated like 2,400 people in Edgington for that game that night. It's Rockridge's homecoming. Rockridge runs back the opening kick, and here we go. But
Steve Amy, right?
Josh Jackson ran it back.
Steve Amy was there, right?
Steve Amy was there. Michael O'Brien had a huge night, of course, but that to me is one of the all-time nights. And like when it's going on, you feel it like it was heat lightning off in the distance. It never rained. It was just lightning. But that game didn't wrap up till after 11.
Wow.
But we fed our stuff back and then stayed till the end because obviously the show was over. But mine, it's not really with the zone, but when you're in the trenches, and Pierce knows what I'm going to talk about here. When we went to Indianapolis in 2005 for Illinois, the first and second round, and Dazzo, you know this, Greg, you know this. When sports does something, boy, news wants into, and you got to do something for every show. We were working like 18-hour days, Pierce, and we were shooting stuff for a North Carolina market because that guy's stuff crapped out. So it was just.
And the guy from Des Moines didn't bring a camera. They
No.
assumed we were going to shoot for him too.
Oh, jeez.
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
But like we persevered through that. I mean, going to White Castle at 3:30 in the morning, on a Sunday morning, and we're us and the workers are the only two sober people in there. I mean, it's a cultural thing, but like I'll never forget that trip. Like working just nonstop and just using humor the whole time to get through it, because that's the only. I mean, that was the only way. Those long days, and that's what I remember the most. But yeah, 10, 15, 99 stock. You're absolutely right. Like if the highlight zone put out, 30 for 30 type things, like that would be one of them, just 10, 15, 99. That's the title of it.
Why do I feel like Dan has a 30 for 30 coming that we don't know about, that he's been working on in the background?
Maybe
I
he
should.
does.
Think about it, Dan.
I could do it thanks to Greg for dubbing off all those shows.
I believe I have every highlight zone that was saved in my possession. So
wow.
And
go to stock though in the basement, right? He has a library of VHS tapes, I think.
We never talked about the briefcases.
Oh yeah. Stock. Let's get into the briefcases.
You're muted, Stock.
Yeah, I know. Because I have a cranky brother. But no, I have briefcases because I write stuff down. And I need my information.
Yep. So what do you carry with you? What kind of historical records?
I have my note cards, the notes, the schedules. I've got a whole bunch of stuff.
Okay. Results from year over year?
I do have that on my on a jump drive.
Okay, so you have gone digital in some form and fashion.
But I still do a lot of writing stuff out, like my note cards, the schedule book. Just you write and then you type it. You get like two or three. It gets ingrained 2 or 3 times.
That's where you come up with your stockpile gold that we see on the bottom line of final scores.
Yes, and a lot of it, and it's all self-generated. I don't have the Elias Sports Bureau on speed dial.
The Stockpile Sports Bureau. Stock,
Yeah, right.
Will you admit that maybe once in a while there is fool's gold? Stats that aren't maybe as relevant or legit as they could be.
They're relevant to me. I mean, maybe not to somebody else, but to me they were relevant. Otherwise, I would have researched it.
My favorite one was in basketball, Pierce. I remember you and I just cackling as we watched the replay of the show. It was like something about Wilton. The final score was Wilton 57, Durant 54. And then Stocking's fool's gold was Wilton outscores Durant 47 to, it was like almost the exact same score. Like they outscored him that much after
the first 3 minutes.
They ended the game on a 57 to 50 run, and it was basically the final score. That's some fool's gold right there.
I used to get so frustrated, Greg. You can with stock because you would continue to go outside of our viewing area to give scores that we didn't need. And we're trying to cram as much into a show as possible. We have no extra seconds. And I'm like, and I would be times that, and this is true, it would pop up. I'm reading off the scores and it would pop up like Eastland Pearl City was up there and whatever. And they are not in our viewing area. The ones that is Winnebago or something.
Well,
and I would go, at one point I go, and these are 2 scores from teams that are not in our viewing area. Let's move on. Like, I was so mad. And I get done. I go, stockpile. What did you just do? Well, I didn't know if I could. I'm like, no, these schools are not in our viewing area. Stop doing it. Bless your heart, stockpile. That, and I always remember it felt like his stockpile stats sometime was like, Alaman is undefeated when scoring more points than our opponent. Like that's the kind of stuff that like would come up.
Boy, we're
like,
exaggerating a little bit now.
Of the game.
Pierce,
or
is it like
along those lines?
Yes. Is it like an impossible question, Pierce, to ask you about like Friday nights that stand out above the rest?
Oh yeah, there's so many. and it's like, and the wave of interns, like I'm sure I had 100 interns.
Yeah.
Through the years, and just some of them were so good and stayed in touch with a bunch of them. And, I'm trying to think of anything. And like one year, Bully and we did state championship game in Aledo, and God love him. Tom Cornelis, one of his things was, you got sound and pictures, boys? I said, yeah. And then Aledo, it wasn't the year they came from 18 down, I don't think, and like 4 minutes to go. But they won, and I'm shooting, and Bully runs out onto the field. S&P, Pierce, S&P. So I thought that was, and that's on video somewhere too.
It is.
It's on a 3/4 inch tape somewhere. They're probably in Greg's basement too.
Probably, yeah. Let me just say, my wife loves that I contain all of the archives of the Highlight Zone in my, in two containers in our basement. But
yeah, but it's fun. Like, you think about how many banquet pieces we did over the year. All you did a bunch, Greg, and just like that stuff gets more valuable as the years go by. And I always think, man, there's a bunch of dads showing their kids like, man, you were good, So, but I think about like just tonight and just what I see from all the guys here, and like even some other stations around the state. Like, and I was pushing for this when I was 30 years old or whatever. Like, am I the only one who sees this? I thought maybe I'm wrong, and wanting to showcase this stuff, and just like the excitement of a Friday night. And like Matt and I talked about, like Pat Lower, that 28% of the school is involved on a Friday night. And that's what separates football, because it goes way back. And that goes back to 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, when there weren't a ton of sports. It was before Title IX and stuff. And that's how everybody got involved. And, I grew up in a football town and stuff. And, as I watched, and you couldn't do it back then. I mean, we won my sophomore, junior, and senior year, and you didn't hear about it. Like, you talked to Burrich too. It's like they won the same years that Geneseo did, and they got nothing in Chicago, no mention whatsoever, So I'm glad to see all this, and I love where the technology has come. But I think about, like, even like a good Bully reference, everybody, the Mary, from Monmouth Warren and United, it's like you just knew she watched every week, and I can still see Bully laying a kiss on her cheek and on video.
I drove by there yesterday, the current United High School, the former Warren High School, and I just think about now all the places I've shot that are different. They're different. I mean, I shot Warren games there, but United. I mean, Bill Adams Field was probably one of my all-time favorite places to shoot, but that's not the same anymore after they took down all those trees and put the solar panels in. What are you doing, Rover Williams Field? That's for another thing. But it's just, I think about all the places I've shot, and every time I go by, George Pratt Memorial Field, it's not about my playing memories. It's like games I shot there, shot a lot of good games there, and just, memories you carry with you, like, all the time. Like, every time I pull into a small town, like if there's a football field there, I think about the best game that I shot there, or what was the best game I seen there. And I thought about that when I went by the old Warren High School. I call it Warren. I'm sorry. It's United. When United won state in 2004, they hosted Deer Creek Mackinac in the semifinals. And back in the day, PJ Starr had the message boards. And this had to be one of the most trash talked games beforehand. It was United. Warren turned into United. So it was United. And then it was DMAC, and it was a United beatdown. And it was just so cool to see that happen, and that small school stuff. And Pierce knows this. I didn't want to go to the big schools. I'm like, send me out. I want to go to the Illinois side, preferably. That was in the contract. And I wanted to do the small school games. I just loved that atmosphere.
Yeah. One more Friday night story. I was going to mention it earlier. It's very fitting that, we're talking Friday night stories, and Bully, you're here. Just this past year, we've joked about Pearsonitis, and I'm at Sherrard Kewanee in Sherrard, and I know that I got to end up at Rockridge for Rockridge, Mercer County. So I knew I wanted to be at Rockridge, Mercer County for a majority of that one. But I get an opening drive from Kewanee, and obviously you want touchdowns, right? You know what? As soon as you can, so you can get out of there. Yep. I thought Kewanee was the favorite in the game, so I'm glad they got the ball. They drive down and score. And I'm like, okay, I can't leave. I got to at least get something for Sherrard. Sherrard goes 3 and out. And then you're kind of in that no man's land of like, do I wait around and try to get another possession or another change of possession? And I don't know. Thank God in the moment I made the decision like, nope, I got something from Sherrard. They had a first down, then they had to punt. I already got Kewanee stuff. I'm good. I got to get out of here. So get over to Rockridge. And it's the Pearsonitis, right? It's like you always feel like you got to go, but you also got to stay and you don't know when to leave. I left. I'm listening to the Rockridge Mercer County game on WRMJ, of course, on the way there. And it was still pretty close. I think it was like a 7-0 game at the time. And I pull in, I run in, and Mercer County was pretty well backed up in their own end. And, you know, so there's still some sense of urgency, but I didn't run all the way down to the other side. I'm just going to stop where I'm at. And so to Cuff's point earlier, like, they're going to be running away from me, but I'll at least get the plays and then we'll readjust. I just ran in, right? I shoot one play. I get an opening cutaway. The second play I shoot, I've been there for 2 minutes. It's who was it? Tanner McKeag who blocked it.
Yep. Tanner McKeag blocked it. Yep.
Tanner McKeag blocks it. Landon Bull, son of Nick Bull on this podcast, scoops it up, scores his only touchdown of his high school career. Thankfully, I was in the right place at the right time. So it was amazing. I get goosebumps telling the story because it's like, you know, I think in my own head, I always feel like, I should have done this different. I should have done this different. And that night, the stars aligned. I'll never forget that moment. It was amazing.
And you shot it. It was divine intervention that you shot it. You know, that
it was perfect.
You know, it was perfect. And, you know, you've known Landon since he was, you know, since he was born.
I remember you calling me when Landon was born. So yep. I was in a live truck with Matt Davis. So there you go.
And the cool thing,
just down the street from the station, there was a horrible crime. And there was a shooting that night. And I remember calling you guys.
Yep. And, you're just live from down the street.
I'm excited, but like I'm so bummed like you guys had to do that story or be there. But like, hey, sorry guys.
Yeah.
See you later.
So you guys go way back to the mornings at 6 and then it comes full circle to him shooting your son's only touchdown. And the irony of it is we air it on Dazzo's show.
I know, isn't it?
That is very funny.
It all fits together. It all works itself out somehow.
I'm just an idiot.
It's great. No, I think it is cool though. Stock, what do you got?
I was just listening to how great everything rolls in a circle, it seems.
Yeah. I
would throw in too, like when I left Channel 6 to go work at the FCA and I got the gear and everything, and Bully, we did this thing every Friday night called Friday Night Bites, so he could get free food. And then he would do a review on the pork chops everywhere, and Landon came with. And so I would always like, and it was like, that's when it was just, you're trying to figure out how to really use Wi-Fi and find a McDonald's and all that. And we would stay, and it was after games were over, and Bully and Landon are out playing catch on all these football fields we're at on Friday nights. And then, you know, he was how old? I don't know, 7, 6, 7, 5, maybe
5 or 6.
It's like 11:30 at night, and we're at Taco Bell, you know. And then this kid's going to be a big tub of goo, and then he turns out to be one of the top athletes around here. So he wasn't corn fed; he was super burrito fed. You know?
He was.
That's amazing.
Midnight Taco Bell. That's how you raise them out there.
You know, I mean, but that was like I wasn't even zone. I mean, you were shooting for both stations, or maybe you were just shooting for Dazzo at the time. But like, that's the closest I could get back to being on the zone was, you know, with Pearson doing the side project, his new project, and getting to go to all those games. Like, I wouldn't trade that for anything. I'm like, I told Landon as he's playing football this last season, I'm like, dude, you have seen more games than any of these kids that you play, than anybody. I mean, you've been able to play in all these games. It's just a wonderful full circle experience. And like, you're not thinking about it when you're shooting sports, you know, back before you're married or when you're married before kids. You're not thinking about it, but like, when you're in the moment and it happens, like I was able to be a part of something successful in high school, and have the community rally behind you. And I always said I wanted my kids to be able to experience that somehow, some way in high school.
Yeah.
And to have experienced that multiple times at a high level, like it doesn't get any better than that. And you wanted them to experience it, and they experienced it tenfold. And that's, as a dad, that's like what I love about it, the relationships and stuff, but watching them do something that you never dreamt possible, is just unbelievable.
You mentioned your kids being there, and Greg, you do it too. Like I know Casey goes around with you.
Yeah.
Like when I had to tell Charlie, my oldest, that I wasn't doing what I was going to do anymore, like that was the one I worried about. And God, I wonder if he'll listen to this. I doubt it. He like, I mean, he's 15. This is like last year or 6 months ago, and he bawled because those are what he grew up doing. Like he remembers meeting Ethan Happ and meeting Chase and Randall and going on a Saturday to Princeton and getting pie afterwards. And like, that's where he grew up. And like Tyler Kidwell's the same way. And you see Tyler growing up now, but Tyler grew up around us doing it. So that's and I know Casey runs and does that with you too. So those are the kind of experiences that we got to do. Cause some dads are like, I'm going to take my kid to school and you're going to go to an office. My kids were like, oh my God, I'm going to get to go to, we covered Moline State Championship basketball, and Charlie just the other day was mentioning to Owen Freeman came over to watch wrestling. Totally different story. But he was talking to Owen. He's like, that's what I got. My dad took me out of school and we went down and covered it together. And it was something I'll never forget. And those are the kind of things that you don't even realize at the time, but your kids, Landon will tell that story when he's old, and Casey and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's the cool part about it too.
Yeah, I just think it's fun to see. It was fun to see, getting back to the initial story. It was fun to be there on the sidelines watching Landon compete, and knowing Bully being in the same same games you were at as you're watching, and I'm covering games. And I think it's all part of that, like Pearson. I think it's what you kind of established in all of us, right? That Friday night is really a celebration of these communities, and it's a really it can be a focal point of a lot of these, small towns, big cities too. It can be a focal point for the community, in that high school. And it's fun to feature that. It's fun to be a part of it. And that's why we're all here, so, and it's cool that in some, way, shape or form, we're all still a part of it. We're all still around the game. So
yeah, for me too, I was with somebody who said, do you miss it? And all that. And I said, well, I'm still doing it really at the level I want. And like my first games I covered was my internship in Peoria, 1982. And a guy was a former athletic director around here I was with, and said, how many games do you think you've seen? And I said, I don't know. I could probably almost figure it out, but there's a chance I've been to more high school football games since 1982 than anyone.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like Edgy Tim said, maybe so, so it's just because there were some nights you'd hit 3 and then Thursday night football and all that stuff too, so. And I don't regret it, and it's kind of people, was it worth it, too? And like you said, what happens especially the small towns, I guess. And, when teams are good in the big cities, people show up, they always show up in small towns, I think, So it's just kind of like, in a way, all of us have really been great encouragers, I think, to towns that celebrate some kid. And I'm not going to say it's their greatest moment or anything like that, but it's like it's something they can look back on and tell their children, their grandchildren too. And I always wonder, like, as I dubbed off all those extra plays from every game, is this worth it? And I think maybe that kid, the play that Bully missed perfectly is there somewhere. And Greg I'm going to pull that and send it to that guy. Yeah. He's got a wife and 3 kids now, and he's finally played at Thanksgiving.
It's crazy.
Guilty. Guilty as charged.
But I've thought about it.
He'll put courtesy Matt Randazzo on it, not the fake on it.
I love it.
But like, I've thought about it over the years, like how many highlights did I save and I just have them on some DVD somewhere or saved on a digital file that like That kid has never seen it. It never aired. I just saved the play because I thought it looked good. And it's like, man, they'd love to see it. I have no idea who that kid is, but yeah, I got a bunch of it. But anyway, no, it's great. This has been an amazing conversation. We could do this again and talk for another 2 hours plus, and maybe we will. But
with all new stories.
That's I know exactly. Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories in the past 30 years.
Stock, you going to be around to step in and do some instant reacts? And
that's when we'll see what goes on. I don't know no one. I have no idea. I have no plans to have plans at the moment.
Well, wherever you're sitting on a Friday night at 11 o'clock, you jump on this Zoom link and we'll talk to you. How about that?
I'm gonna do one of these this fall.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely. Bully, you got to come on the instant reacts.
For sure.
Bully would be a hit on the instant reacts.
Yeah, we got some plans. Randazzo and I got some plans. We'll up the instant reacts game and have some fun with this fall. Pearson, you're always invited, on the instant reacts. So
yeah, and it's always best when when you think about after all those shows, we're at our best at 1 a.m. We just can't keep our eyes open. It's just crazy stuff comes out of our mouth.
Oh man, I love it. That's the best. That's the best. All right. Anything else, boys? I think we'll wrap it up. And Pierce, I'll see you at a 7-on-7 in a month or so. How about that?
Probably so. Probably so.
All right, boys.
3 weeks away from high school football activities beginning. Think about that.
That is exciting.
Don't wait for the schedules to be released either.
That is exciting. Bully, we'll have to call you in as a Three Rivers Athletic Conference insider here to give us, maybe we'll get your takes throughout the season.
For sure. I'm not necessarily, I might not be at every Rockridge game next year, but I'll probably be at a game every week for sure.
All right.
That's not going to change.
I love it. Yeah. Like the sounds of that. All right, boys. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you to everyone. If you're still listening, God bless you. You've stuck around for a heck of an adventure here, but I think it was amusing. I know we had fun telling the stories. Hopefully, you the listener had fun listening to them. Stock, as always, thank you for being here. Dazzo, Bully, and Dan Pearson, thanks for all that you established here that, kind of all led us to this, to where we are now, I guess. So,
yep. Love it all. Love it all.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this week. We'll be back in a couple weeks. And before you know it, the high school season previews will be here. Thank you so much for joining. We'll see you next time. That'll do it for this week's episode of View from the West. Thank you so much for listening. I encourage you to go out to Apple Podcasts or Podbean and subscribe so you can follow along, and downloads will come automatically every week. You can follow along on Twitter at ViewFromWestPod. You can also email me if you're interested in being a sponsor, viewfromwestpod@gmail.com. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.